I will start at the top, which is with the DA inviting more people to attend DrupalCon on scholarships this year than ever before. What important message would you want them to take away as part of their DrupalCon experience?
I think learning. I think for me, and one of the biggest things to do is to learn about new things. So yeah, we're excited that you are attending, and we would love for you to learn more about Drupal, and then hopefully use those new skills in your own professional career. And then eventually, when you feel ready or you feel good to, we would love for you to contribute. But most of all, to learn and pick up some new skills that might be good.
Great. Rachel, are you back officially? Oh, I can't hear you.
We don't have audio, Rachel.
But we can read the slide. Sometimes I wonder why there's no participant from underrepresented section like developers from South Asian countries in Drupal core team. So Dries, can you speak to diversification of the Drupal core team?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's absolutely right. We don't have good enough diversity on the core committer team. We do have a couple people from, but not necessarily sort of from underrepresented sections in South Asia. I don't know if there's a single reason to point to, but I will say that typically, in order to become a core contributor on the core team, most people have a long history contributing to Drupal and kind of evolve into that role. And it does take a lot of time, and to invest in contributing and learning about Drupal. And unfortunately, time, is still a privilege, and not everybody can dedicate the time, to become a core committer. So while I would love to change it, I think we need to start by finding ways to pay people to become contributors, help, invest in people so that they can learn, not in their spare time. So I think that's one of the key reasons. There might be many other reasons. I personally would love to see a more diverse core committer team. But often the way it works, just so everybody knows, is, when we're looking for people, we post sort of a call for people, let's say, and people can raise their hands, and then we select from those that raise their hands. So I think we need to make sure more people can raise their hands.
So Rachel, I see you talking, but I still don't hear you. So I'm gonna be Rachel for just a moment. I apparently mentioned planning for diversity, equity, and inclusion activities as part of the DA update yesterday. Do you have anything that you can expand on that from your point of view, either as project lead or as a member of the board?
Yeah. As a board, as a Drupal Association board member, it's something that we do talk quite a bit about. And it's something that we continue to think about all the way from, and we actually just talked about this in another session, like sort of the nominating committee for board members, as an example. We really try to improve the diversity of the board. And overall, I think we've done, a good job, but we can do better for sure. But and so it's something that we talk about, and that we want to invest in more, actually, and continue to invest in more. And we do that because we believe that that is the right thing to do, sort of ethically, but also sort of in the best interest of the project. In that when we do improve diversity and inclusion, that we will be a better team, that we will be more competitive, if you will, in the market. right? In that we can innovate faster, collaborate better, and become more resilient. And that to me, is obviously very, very important for the well-being of the project. It's actually interesting. I was thinking about this the other day, how inequality actually makes us less resilient, and you kind of see it right now in the world. If I take it sort of outside of the Drupal project for a minute, you can see with COVID-19 that countries or locations with maybe a lot of poverty or imbalanced healthcare coverage, let's say, are struggling, right? So they are struggling to deal with fixing this, and the way to fix it is through worldwide cooperation, I think. And the inequality, in a way, is leading to sort of a human tragedy. I mean, of historic proportions in the world, and I know that's kind of very macro. What's happening in the world, but I think the same thing is true for organizations like Drupal, where inequality has all sorts of negative consequences. So in terms of resiliency and innovation, so I'm proud of what we're doing, and I like us to do more. But I'm actually very proud of how we are leading in many ways compared to others. So I hope we continue and find new ways to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Hey, Rachel, one quick tip. If you go to the audio settings within Hopin, it will let you change built-in versus headphones. That might help. Cool. All right, I'm going to hit the next one then, as Rachel's working on, see, live technology. It's great. We're doing it. Can we make Drupal DX better for devices with less power? For example, a Windows machine with 4 GB RAM. This can significantly increase the Drupal adoption for students. So, it's kind of that capabilities that they have from a machine perspective.
Yeah, I would love that, actually. I think that would be great for the reasons that you mentioned, like making it more accessible for students that don't have the means to buy like expensive MacBook Pro or something. I think that's actually very important, and there were some great initiatives around this a few years ago. I remember going to India for DrupalCon. I think it was Mumbai, and I met with the dean of the university, and they had sort of the equivalent of a one laptop a child project. I don't know if you know what that is, but it was a basic laptop that they were giving to students at the university. And they actually had it preloaded with Drupal. So it wasn't a very heavy laptop. It was a fairly modest laptop. And also because internet connectivity wasn't all that good. Forgot the numbers, but like at universities in India, some universities, maybe 1 out of 10 students could use the internet at a given point in time. And so this notion of offline access to Drupal and was also very important. So, and they actually had funding for this, and I don't know where it's at, but they were doing some work. But anyway, that aside, I'd love to see us make Drupal more light. I think it benefits many people, including those people that can afford to buy a MacBook Pro. So it's kind of a no-brainer in that it helps everyone. I know Jeff Geerling has done some work around making Drupal work on a Raspberry Pi, but even Raspberry Pi's got pretty beefy. And then one other thing, sorry, I don't see these questions ahead of time, so I'm a little bit rambly sometimes. I think one of the great things about Composer 2, which is not quite yet released, like right now we use Composer 1, and I think Composer 2 is around the corner, and one of the great things about it is that it actually uses less memory, and that specifically will help with the Drupal developer experience. And so we're looking to adopt Composer 2, hopefully in the near future. So, it's things like that that are exciting and that help us improve things. So I definitely encourage people to help us reduce the memory footprint or performance footprint of Drupal. It helps everyone, including the planet, frankly. You know.
And Liam mentioned that one of the goals of the Raspberry Pi Foundation is to get more pies in the hands of underserved students, I would imagine. And so when we talk about kind of flipping back to diversity, equity, inclusion, which I think is going to be a theme with all these things, is that's part of the way that we as the Drupal community can collaborate, right? So who are those organizations and other foundations and nonprofits that have access to those students or to those communities where we can be a great collaborative force in making sure Drupal's part of that solution as part of our Drupal helping the world, which I know that Dries, you and I talk about a lot, and we're both really passionate about.
Yeah, and this might actually, so yesterday in the keynote, I mentioned sort of the Pareto principle, but this might actually be useful to kind of measure. It would be a little bit of work, but to measure where does most of the memory usage go to, as an example, or most of the CPU consumption go to. And then you can actually break it up in smaller things, and you can stack rank those things that we need to address, and we can work on them one by one or in parallel. So I don't know if we've done that or not, but there's probably a way for us to get organized around this with not too much effort, and to really identify where the bottlenecks are and then just go after the biggest.
The next question is there still a sizable market for SMB Drupal projects, or are many of them moving to site builder tools now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question. I actually still think there's a sizable market, but I don't think it's Drupal's sweet spot. So let me see if I can explain that a little bit better. I think on the lower end of the market, there is a lot of competing technologies. And while I think Drupal can be used there, it's harder to convince people to use Drupal there. Versus if you look at the higher end of the market, I think Drupal is more uniquely differentiated, frankly, compared to other solutions. So let's say the win rate of Drupal, I think, can be higher because there's real things that Drupal does that the high end of the market cares about. So I don't know if that's a very clear answer, but I mean, at the low end of the market is obviously massive. And I think if we can do things to win more, I think there's opportunity. But, I think most people are looking at simpler options at the low end of the markets.
Flip to Rachel took her slides back, so I'm going to look back at the Slido webpage real quick. And one of the next questions is, using the free version of Slack doesn't allow for message retention, and a lot of information is not accessible as more comes in. How can we solve this problem? So I don't know if this is a Drupal project problem. It is a community issue as we try to collaborate for sure. And I know we have a lot of discussions about this on the DA side as well. Yeah,
I mean, I agree it's a problem. I don't know what the solution is. I mean, I think it's more of a Drupal association item in my mind, but either we have to pay for Slack, which would probably be very expensive given the size of the community, or we need to look at alternative solutions to Slack, which may have its own challenges in terms of how easy some of these solutions are to adopt. So I actually don't know what the best solution is, but yeah, it's a bit of a shame that so much great conversations aren't retained and archived. So I'm sure other people have suggestions of what tools we could consider.
Absolutely. So Rachel, if you want to go to the next one in your deck, or I'll just keep picking them at random.
I hope this works. Are you hearing me?
We can, yeah.
Thank goodness. Yay. Okay. It feels like the initiative we talked about today are actually focused at almost like clusters of initiatives. There's quite a lot involved in them. How do we make sure that we stay focused?
Yeah, I try to increase focus by going from 15 plus initiatives to just 5. So I think that's one great way to focus. And I only, in my mind, actually created one cluster, which was to take a few of the existing initiatives, media, Claro, and Layout Builder, and just kind of finish them, and by making them standard out of the box. And so that was a clustering. But then the JavaScript administration UI initiative, I actually sort of declustered, if that's a word. I kind of took it apart, if you will, and focused on a much smaller subset. And with the goal to just have one first component built. So I think that's another way that I think we're actually increasing focus. So it'd be interesting to learn, why John, I think it is, right? I see it on the screen, thinks we're actually clustering initiatives. I actually think, as I said, I think we're getting more focused than in the past, which I think is a great thing.
I think it's good that we constantly reassess the things that we're working on as well. We don't just assume that we have to push them all the way to the end if they're no longer working as they are. I think that's great. Yeah. So there's a question from Boris Mann, which Heather may have an opinion on by now as well, which is, with the high cost of traveling in person, do you see online conferences becoming a permanent mix for the Drupal community going forwards?
Yeah. You want me to start, Heather, or do you want to? Yeah. I think it would be great if it could be a mix. So first of all, I love this virtual conference. It's been awesome. Actually, been very impressed by the tools. And one of the things that I love about it is it does it so inclusive, and that we have people attending from all around the world, and that there is no sort of travel barrier, if you will. What I also love is that on the second day of the conference, I feel a lot less tired than I do in an in-person DrupalCon. But I will say that I do miss seeing everybody in person, and I miss that. I really love that human in-person interaction, and I actually think that's really important for Drupal. If I think about the success of Drupal and what makes Drupal such a stronger, healthier community than many others, is the fact that we have met in person, and the fact that we have had these in-person moments, whether it's at the conference or in the evening after the conference, over a few drinks. The camaraderie that you can create at an in-person event is really strong, and is a reason why people keep coming back. And I think the jury is out on this, but I think it will be harder to create that kind of camaraderie through a virtual conference. So I think there is an opportunity to have the best of both worlds, and I'm sure Heather and you and the rest of the DA will be thinking about how we combine in-person and virtual conferences to try and get us the best of both worlds.
Anything, Heather? You're quiet. Oh no, now Heather! Your moment of glory. Oh well. Yeah, oh well. We'll come back, shall we? Yeah, we'll come back on that one, because there's quite a related question from Matthew Saunders, I believe, about the COVID crisis that we are globally all going through. And the fact it's caused many of us to stay at home and totally change our lives in many ways. So what unexpected things have you observed because of this? Both obviously challenging, but also maybe positive as well. What have you seen that's made you think, and what have you learned?
Like, as it relates to myself, to Drupal, to the world, or all of that?
Let's start with yourself.
Well, I think I've learned that sort of health and wellness is important. In the beginning of COVID crisis, I would basically spend 12 hours a day behind my computer and go through this routine, like sleep, eat, work, sleep, if you will, and I wouldn't really leave the house. And that really started to get tough on many fronts. And I had to kind of learn how to work from home effectively and make time for going outside and doing sports so that I could stay healthy, sort of mentally and physically. So that's a personal thing. The other thing that I've learned, and to be careful maybe that I don't get too political, but I've learned that I think good leadership is important through moments of crises, and that bad leadership can lead to a lot of pain and tragedy. And that's something that I've learned, and then it's something that we should all do. And then the other thing that I've learned, and I've alluded to this in the beginning, is that sort of the value and the importance of cooperation. Like, in order to beat this thing, we have to all collaborate and cooperate. Otherwise, we won't beat it. And that's actually a lesson that we can apply to not just that, but also how we work on Drupal. And, for Drupal to win, we also need to collaborate. So I don't know, I just started connecting some of these dots in my head just the other day. But so, yeah, I think, personally stay healthy and focus on that. And then,
yeah. I think that there's a lot there. Yeah. So we've got Heather back in the room now, and I think that I hear Heather now. If Heather can say something.
This thing on? Am I working?
Yeah, you're good. I know. So if we just jump back to DrupalCon and the fact that we're all sat here in our homes right now, which is so strange, and whether that's the thing.
Well, it's interesting. So our Drupal Association team has always been at home working. So that part of the shift was not new at all for us. It was looking at how do we translate the things where we're not normally at home, like DrupalCon. So if I go back, I've seen a lot of chat about the idea of, how we create both accessibility in the events that we do, and how do we make it accessible for people, and then not knowing how the COVID crisis will go into 2021. Those are all things we're thinking about from a planning perspective. And so we're really weighing what are the best things to do for the community versus what are the resources and capacity that we have to make things happen. So as much as I'd love to have an answer around hybrid, in-person, not, I think we're committed, as Dries said, to in-person every chance we get. And I don't see that desire ever going away. Where I get excited about the technology of an online conference is beyond even a conference itself, but how can we do more online collaboration around contribution? How can we get people together more often in different ways than we've typically done at DrupalCon? And then how do we use the tools that now exist? Because companies like Hopin are dramatically increasing what their tools do by the fact that all of us need them all of a sudden. So this time next year, who knows what these platforms will be capable of, and how we use that to supplement everything we do, not just at the DA, but think about even at a local level, how you can get better accessibility for your local communities by using these tools for people that can't always be there in person as well.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because as you were talking, I was thinking about how conferences are a communication tool as well. So this next question it's an anonymous one, but how can we answer the criticism that Drupal is not popular and has a poor reception amongst developers? Any thoughts about that?
Well, I think Drupal is very popular, first of all. I think it's used super widely. And, I would say there's so many things that we do so well that I think people just don't understand or know about. In many ways, we're so far ahead of others. And sometimes the devil's in the detail So it's hard maybe for people to initially understand these things. And one example could be our caching layer. It's a technical example here, but the way we do page caching and cache components and big pipe, I mean, no other CMS has that, right? And it's something that makes Drupal extremely scalable. Yet, if you were to stop a random web developer on the street, if you will, they most likely wouldn't know about it. As one example. And there's a long list of things that Drupal does, things that actually inspire other people outside of Drupal to do the same. The way we collaborate on Drupal.org, the issue queue system that we've built, the testing infrastructure that we've built, it's world class. It doesn't compare with so many other things. I mean, I can go on and on and on. And I think one of the big challenges is to get that word out and to share that with other communities, and even to go to where other web developers are and to talk proudly about these things that Drupal does. We've made a lot of great improvements to ease of use, even to the upgradability of Drupal. But so many people's understanding of Drupal is stuck sort of with Drupal 4.7 or Drupal 5. Like they looked at Drupal 5 10 years ago and never looked back. And I think there's an opportunity for us to be loud about that and say, hey, the Drupal that you know, the Drupal that you last tried or looked at, it's not the Drupal that we have today. And look at some of the amazing things that Drupal does that other systems don't do. So, I mean, a lot of that is perception, I think. And I'm sure some of it is true as well. Like I'm not trying to dodge that, but the truth is that Drupal is one of the most stable, one of the most secure, one of the most scalable, one of the, Drupal is so many great things compared to so many other systems. So, I think it's up to all of us. Accessible too, like we're leading with accessibility compared to so many others. So the list kind of goes on and on for me. And I think what we should do more of is kind of promote that, if you look at other organizations, I'm going to go on a tangent a little bit here because I'm passionate about this topic, but if you look at even proprietary software companies, I'm going to pick a random one like Salesforce. We all know Salesforce. If you look at their budgets, and they're all public, they probably spend 10% of their budget on engineering and like 50% or 40 to 50% of their budget on sales and marketing. So 4 times more effort or money goes into marketing and sales, which it's kind of the same thing in my mind. It's convincing people to use Salesforce. And open source and Drupal were kind of the opposite, where we spend like 95% of our efforts in engineering and a little bit of our efforts in marketing. And I don't want to minimize all of the great marketing work that happens. Don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to make a point, which is that to win, it's not just about building a great product, which is what we have, but it's to win, you also have to convince others why your product is so great. And so I think that's something that we can all do more of. And I know a lot of us are, but anyway.
I did see Suzanne Dergacheva talking about getting across a consistent message in the chat just now. And that does seem relevant. It also leads on to this next question. Around how people view the product that we have. Say Drupal wants to be a structured data engine. Clients often choose Drupal for its flexibility. And then there's things like paragraph and cohesion or other low code things. How do we balance between that structured modeling of data and people just being able to point and shoot with everything that they want on the screen?
Yeah, it's a great question, and these things are seemingly at odds, but I don't think they are. Meaning, I think you can be both. And I think it can both be a great structured data engine and have a great out-of-the-box experience and have a great, page building experience, right? Like, I think about these things that being sort of at two different layers, where the data structure is at the bottom, and then creating pages, which is just one channel that you use this content for, is kind of sits above it. So I think they can easily coexist, and I think we can make them work well together. Now, if I think about balancing, it really comes down sort of in balancing flexibility and powerful features with ease of use. And again, they're kind of seemingly at odds, but I actually do think if you look at the best products in the world, they've managed to deliver powerful products, but made them super easy to use. And I've given this example before, but just think about your smartphone and all the things you can do with that. It's an incredibly powerful product. Yet, Apple and others have made those things easy to use, right? And so they can coexist. And I think what makes a product great. And it's why I've been very passionate, and others too, about making Drupal easier to use without removing any of its sort of powerful features. And if you look at what we did for Drupal 9, a lot of that was around ease of use. And now if you look at what I'm proposing for Drupal 10, it's really about extending those improvements in ease of use and making those out of the box and making it easy from the first moment somebody starts getting involved with Drupal. And that actually goes back to the previous question, in that people are quick to have an opinion about Drupal, and a lot of that is to do with sort of the first impression, if you will, like the first experience with Drupal. And if we can make that better, I think we can deliver something that's both easy to use yet very powerful. Anyway,
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
How I think about that.
Yeah, and again, it leads into yet another question. This one from Kevin Carland, who's you may have seen in sessions wearing his wizard hat.
He saw this and answered it earlier.
Yeah, we had
did you while I was off?
It was my poor attempt to be Rachel, which was the best we could do. But yes, so.
I do apologize.
That's okay.
No problem.
Okay. You've thrown me right off now. Hang on. Okay, so we have just talked about upgrading of Drupal being much easier. So if we could get to that stage where upgrading Drupal is a much easier thing to do, where does that take us? So we've talked about Drupal 10, but maybe even beyond that, what are we talking about? What's the biggest 3 goals? Not specific pieces of technology, but wider goals than that. How do you want to change the world?
That's a great question. I have to think about this a little bit, but for me, I think for me, like one goal is just to keep Drupal very relevant, and in making it relevant, what I mean is really in terms of adoption. I would love to see more and more organizations and individuals adopt Drupal, and then almost use it as a wedge, if you will, to drive good behaviors and to help foster like a healthy open web. Like what I mean by that is a web that is accessible, that embraces open standards, that embraces maybe distributed technologies away from proprietary vendor lock-in, if you will. So for me, that's what drives me. And I know not everyone cares about that the same way that I do or cares about it at all. But I would love to see Drupal grow by making it easier to use. And that's not just the upgrading experience, as is alluded to in this slide, but our question, it's like easy to use and for beginners, easy to use for less technical people, and lower the cost of maintenance, if you will, which is another shape or form of ease of use, with the goal to drive adoption, and then just help make the web a little bit better. For me, that's my biggest goal, and I don't know if that's 3 biggest goals here, but that's what drives me.
I really like it. So I always like to throw in one that looks hard, but actually I think you've been doing a lot on this recently. One important is to step aside and make room for others. Would you consider giving up the Dries note to let other voices that have that time on stage?
That's an interesting question. I have to think about this one as well. I mean, I definitely see the value of stepping aside to make room for others, and I try to do that. And maybe I should do more of that. At the same time, I also see the Dries note as a unique opportunity to provide direction and leadership to the project twice a year for about an hour each time, which I think is also really important, to kind of, and in my Dries notes, I try to unite us and to lead us forward, not just in terms of product strategy, but also in terms of other aspects, more the community aspects, including diversity and inclusion. So I mean, I think I have to think about this a little bit more, to be quite honest, because I do want to keep providing that leadership. At the same time, I want to do what's best for the project too. And if we were to say, all right, it's time to stop the Dries note in favor of other things, I would definitely be open to that. But
Dries, if you don't mind, I've got some thoughts on that too. Just as a non-Dries that gets to watch the Dries note and participate, I think one of the things we can do that doesn't necessitate getting rid of a Dries note or something similar is, we have the main stage. Let's just get more people on it. So it's not about having you not be part of that conversation, but how do we bring more voices to the conversation and in a way that makes sense? And so that's really when we thought about what to do with the main stage here in this tool. It wasn't, when we have the typical in-person DrupalCon, we're renting space and time and labor, and so we're somewhat limited in what we can do where. And here we had the main stage open 12 hours a day for 3 days, and so I hope what people see is we can still have time with Dries and the Dries note, but then we put really powerful, diverse thought leaders to share their voices on the main stage as well. And so I think that's more of what's going to round out our community.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, and I will add to that if I may. And that is that I take my Dries notes very serious. I mean, I spend a lot of time, effort, and frankly money on putting them together. And one of the things that we spend a lot of time and effort on, typically, and it's something that I've been doing sort of the last, 5 years or so, is bringing video interviews into the Dries note, where other people have a voice in the Dries note itself. I didn't do that this time, and sort of I broke the streak, I guess. And the reason was just not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure about how well it would work in this format, where we were advised, frankly, to not do too much animation and video kind of stuff. And so that's the only reason why I didn't do it, because I didn't know if it would actually work. I didn't want it to be like super choppy and unclear. So I will definitely continue to do that and bring different voices into the Dries note.
That's really good. I mean, also, obviously, we've done things like where the CWG reports as well. So, they report into the community elected board members. So rather than reporting to you for escalation, they go to a community team, which is great. I think it's a really change. So I've also popped up something that we need to do ourselves. Is there a plan migrating Drupal.org to Drupal 8 or 9?
Yeah.
I mean, it's great, but it kind of looks weird when D.O is on 7.
Yeah, I can see how The optics are a little bit weird, and I know from talking to the DA and Tim actually specifically that we do have a plan, and we're working on some other things right now. But I believe that Tim and the team would like to start working on this towards the end of the year. That doesn't mean we'll have it done by the end of the year. I just want to be, I don't want to set the wrong expectations for Heather and Tim and others, but I believe the intent is to start work on a migration towards the end of the year. I think they're still working on things like GitLab and other things that are ahead of that in the queue, so to speak. I don't know, Heather, if that's still the latest or not, but.
So we would have done it even sooner had we not needed to pivot so rapidly and so greatly around COVID-19 and changing DrupalCon and all the things we did. So it's not for a lack of our desire to have it done. It becomes a resource and timing constraint, and different things become different priorities to the project and the community, and we try to shift with those. And so this is something that we really want to do. I'm looking at how I fundraise resources so that we can add to our resource challenge on the engineering team, because frankly, that's the way that we're going to be able to push a lot of these things forward. So I very much want us to upgrade, because I want the world to have the experience of Drupal that we all desire. And so it's just juggling resources and time constraints and making it work, but we are definitely committed to it.
Some people in chat are saying that there is a Drupal.org panel discussion coming up next, and that might be a good topic for that panel, I imagine.
I would imagine it probably will be. That's fantastic. So we are coming up, unless you can answer one very quick question. Very quick, Dries. Oh, I've lost it now, because we only have a couple of minutes left. And this comes up as a trivia question on occasions. So, what's the hairstyle thing about? What's the hair product you use?
You know how I keep forgetting the name, but it's I can tweet a photo of it later. It's a yellow tube, and it actually says, I think it says hair glue. It's not a gel, it's hair glue, and it looks a lot like wood glue.
This is so
I have to go look for it and tweet it. I will say, when I was younger, this is way back when, I would use egg white. Have you ever tried egg white?
Yeah, that works. Yeah,
there you go.
But that's been many, many years now.
We will get cut off, but before we get a cut, say thank you to you both for answering some questions really well. And I'd like to say thank you to all of our audience and people that have submitted questions, because they really, really do make this worthwhile, and we wouldn't be doing anything without the questions. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I literally think we're about to be cut off. Hair glue.
Who knew?
It's a thing. It's probably a marketing thing.
We wanted to use a hair thermometer for Drupal chairs, but we talked ourselves out of it. So maybe the next time we run a campaign, it's the Dries hair gets up to 100% of funding.
Yeah, we do that.
That's our thermometer.
Absolutely do that.
If we ever do another in-person DrupalCon, it could be in the what's it called? The bag. Some hair glue. It's actually the Drupal hair glue, I think.
There you go. Let's brand it. We just talked about promoting.
Yeah, why not? We do have a swag shop. Thank you both. And
thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody in chat. Enjoyed reading
Thanks
it.
for all the questions. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Rachel.